This is a video from the Pivoinerie about planting tree peonies bare root in the fall. Tree peonies are different from herbaceous peonies because they're actually small woody shrubs, and because they're propagated by grafting. The position of the graft point is very important to consider when planting them. So this is a 2-year-old bare root tree peony, and we're looking at the root system, and you can see where the bulge is. That's the graft point, because tree peonies are propagated by taking a small piece of tree peony wood and attaching it or grafting it onto a section of herbaceous peony root. And the point where that intersection is made is called the graft point. Now here we can see two slender roots emanating from above the graft point. Those are actually real tree peony roots. Everything below the graft point, though, is the herbaceous root. And that herbaceous root is called a nurse root. And it's called a nurse root because it's there to nurse the tree peony through a short period of time until which it can create its own roots. And all of this is important to know because we need to plant it such that it can indeed grow its own roots. So here's a closer look at that herbaceous nurse root structure that's going to support our tree peony for the next few years until it has an abundance of its own roots. So let's take our bare root tree peony out into the garden to plant. It needs to be planted in fertile garden soil in a well-drained location with semi-shade or full sun exposure. And we're digging a rather deep hole here for a rather small tree peony, but it needs to be deep because the placement of that graft point is critical to the future success of our peony. We need to make sure that that graft point is at least 4, if not 6 inches below the finished soil level, and this will ensure that an abundance of tree peony wood is in direct contact with the soil, and as such, over the years, will develop its own tree peony root system and will no longer be required to rely on the herbaceous root system. That might mean that it has to be planted much more deeply than a herbaceous peony, but that's fine. That's what we want. In some cases, you might just be left with a small stick with a little bud on it coming out of the ground. This, however, is a much better situation than not planting your tree peony deeply enough. Planting it deeply like this will ensure that it'll be productive and will be long-lived. Tree peonies can be expensive, but they can live for decades if they're planted in the right location and they're planted at the proper depth. So it's worth taking a few extra minutes to make sure that you actually get it right.